movie was created as Angeline, Katie, and Sandy's final class project for their advanced civil equal justice class with Ada Shanjafi. So what's the problem we're trying to solve? Well, landlords file unlawful detainer actions to get help from the court to evict a tenant, which is fine if the tenant's done something in violation of their rental agreement. But sometimes UD actions are filed wrongfully or end up resolving in favor of the tenant. But even if the tenant wasn't evicted, the lawsuit may show up as an eviction on a tenant screening report. This is a problem because future landlords may see that on the report and use it to deny a rental application. One solution to this problem is to file a motion to redact. If granted, that motion would prevent landlords and tenant screeners from seeing the unlawful detainer action in the first place, so it won't end up on the report. The motion to redact isn't the only document that needs to be filed with the court in order to successfully prevent evictions from falsely or wrongfully appearing on a person's record. There are a total of 3 that we'll be covering in this video. The first is the motion itself. Next is a declaration in support of that motion. And finally, proposed court orders. The motion to redact itself explains the legal arguments in favor of redaction and directs the court to look at the declaration for more specific facts. The declaration includes all of the facts necessary to build the tenant's case. And the proposed court order basically provides the court with an example of how it can decide in favor of the tenant. Just as a review, here's a list of the documents we'll be discussing. We're going to start with a motion to redact. Since we're talking about fairly technical forms here, I want to be sure you're able to orient yourself. At the top of the screen, you can see the words motion to redact. This will always tell you which document we're working on. Also at the top of the screen, you can see which page we're on and where on that page you can find the section shown on the screen. In addition, there are numbers on the side of the page. The number 1 is always at the top and the number 24 is always at the bottom. These show up on your printed page exactly as they're shown here. Now let's get started filling out that motion. I'll pause a moment so that you can make sure you're on the very first page of the motion to redact. At the very top right, you should see a space to fill in the date and time. This is the date and time you'll be filing the motion and other paperwork with the court. I'll fill mine in so that you can see an example of what it should look like. A quick note, you can always wait until the day you file everything to fill in that date and time. That way you'll know it's accurate. Next, you need to fill in the county. This needs to be the county where the original case was filed against you by your landlord or property management company. You'll be filing all of your paperwork with that same court. It may seem counterintuitive, but for the purposes of this motion, the landlord that filed the original action against you is still the plaintiff, and you, the tenant, are still the defendant. So fill in your landlord's name exactly as it appeared on your original documents in the space provided for plaintiff. You may not be able to find those original documents. Chances are you can get a new copy from the court. If you need help, call the Clear Line at 888-201-1014. Again, that number is 888-201-1014. I'll leave that number up for a little while in case you need to write it down. Next, put your initials in the space provided for defendants. That's probably not how it was on your original documents, but we'll be explaining to the court why you're changing that. Here's another bit of information you might need to get from the paperwork you received when your landlord originally filed this case. That's the case number. Fill it in as exactly as you see it, dashes and all. Now, although we're still on the motion to redact, we're moving on to the bottom of the first page. Remember, you can always look at the numbers on the side of the page to find out where we're at. Since almost all of the facts of your case will be found in the declaration, it's important to make sure the court knows to look at the declarations, right? So make sure to fill in your name here. If you have other people who would like to make a statement on your behalf, fill in their names here. Otherwise, just leave the next 2 blanks empty. That was quick. Now let's take a look at the body of the motion. This is the section at the top of page 2, the beginning of the legal argument section. We'll be looking at a few key sections of the motion to redact, but please be sure to read the entire motion and ask whatever questions you have. If you don't have access to a legal clinic that can answer your questions right now, try calling that clear line number I gave you earlier. Here we are in the middle of page 3. To find the exact spot in your paper copy, find line number 9 on the side of the page. I'll wait for a moment while you look for it. Okay, so this portion in the yellow rectangle spells out the legal standard you need to meet in order to convince the court to redact your name and replace it with your initials. In essence, you need to meet each of these 6 elements in order to prevent a so-called eviction from showing up on your tenant screening records. Let's walk through a few of the key points. First, you're the moving party, you need to give notice to all parties in the action. That basically means you need to notify the landlord and anyone else that has a legal interest in this action. You can do that by mailing them a copy of the motion and declaration through certified mail. Let's skip ahead a bit to number 3. We'll come back to number 2. The third element starts off by saying a serious and imminent threat to the moving party's privacy is shown. Basically, you need to make it clear that having the eviction show up in the court records is a big problem and that you're facing the consequences of it now or you will very soon. The next half of the third element is that the threat is specific, concrete, certain, and definite. It can't just be because you're losing sleep or even if you're very angry about it. What we need to show is that you're actually losing money or access to housing or something else that's very measurable. One of the easiest ways to meet this element is to show that you've been rejected as a prospective tenant based on having this eviction show up on your record. The fourth element is a balancing test, your needs against the needs of society. You'll meet this element if you can show that allowing the public to find this unlawful detainer action by searching for your name and having this eviction show up on your record really isn't helping anyone. For instance, it doesn't really tell a prospective landlord whether or not you'll be a good tenant. Also, showing that it hurts you a lot can tip the balance in favor of redaction. Now let's go back to number 2 and talk a moment about numbers 5 and 6 as well. These will all basically take care of themselves. As for number 2, it's pretty much up to the court to hold an open hearing. And number 4 and 5 are covered in the legal arguments. As I said before, make sure to read those legal arguments, ask questions if you have any, and maybe you'll notice something that doesn't quite fit your facts and that will need to be changed. So, we're moving on to the bottom of page 3 around line 19. Here the motion tells the court that it will find specific information in the declaration. Actually, it tells the court right here to read your declaration to find out how the eviction showing up on your record is hurting your ability to get rental housing. The declarations that you're going to fill out are designed to make sure you give the court that information, but it's important to keep it in mind and that you fill it out completely. We'll talk more about that when we get to the declarations. Next, let's look quickly at the middle of page 4, starting around line 9. Again, the motion is directing the court to check out the declaration for more information, this time about how you have been or will be denied housing as a result of that unlawful detainer showing up on your records. Make sure that your declaration fully explains that you've been denied housing and how you know you were denied housing based on this unlawful detainer action. Alternatively, if you haven't yet been denied, and you need to be very clear about why you believe you will be denied and what that has to do with this unlawful detainer action. Again, we'll talk more about this when we get to the declaration pages, and the declaration is designed to make sure that you get all that information out, but just pointing out in the motion how that's related to the declaration pages. It hasn't taken too terribly long to get to the last page, page 5, and you only have a bit more to fill out before you're ready to move on to the declaration form. You just need to fill in the date that you're submitting this to the court again. This time you'll start with the day, so here the 5th, then the month, and then the year. As before, I filled it out here just to give you an example. Also, as before, you can wait to fill this out until you're at the courthouse, just to make sure you get the right date. Finally, just sign and you're ready to move on. As you can tell, this video is not yet complete. There are many things left to be done, but no time to finish them before finals are over. Unfortunately, it took too long to figure out how to use all the software, so there wasn't as much time available to actually create the video. But now we know how to do it, and would be honored if Eric would like us to finish the rest of the video. There are a few things we'd like to see done. Number one, we'd like to have Eric go through the script and make any changes he thinks are necessary. He's the expert here. We'd also like to have someone else do the voiceover. Katie, that's me, doesn't like the sound of her voice. Plus, having a voice that's familiar to communities of color, perhaps several people doing different sections of the script, might add some credibility, and it would just be fun too. Finally, we'd like to have more time to figure out the more creative options available in PowerPoint and Movie Maker. These are some really fun things. But most of all, we'd just like to thank Ada and Eric. We've learned so much this semester, and in particular through this project. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.